put curtains up so it doesn't look like I'm streaming from a sauna. Let's talk. What up, viewers? What up? What up? Calc Soups here, and today is Friday, August 14th, and that means it's time for a quick recap of the week in video game news. Big news this week is that the game that you all knew they were probably working on was officially announced. That's right, I'm talking about Hogwarts Legacy is getting a sequel, and it's surprising surprising to literally no one, since the game sold 40 million copies, made like $2 billion, that of course, as soon as the game launched and there wasn't much DLC to be seen, that they were probably saving it all for the sequel. So again, all that speculation, but yeah, they announced this week that Hogwarts Legacy 2 is in production. Don't know about the time frame. You know, we got the first game in 2022, so you know it's going to be a little bit before we get the next one. But you know, they are going to be working on it, and they've got some pretty big shoes to fill if they want to sell another 40 million copies of the sequel. Moving on, the review embargo seems to be slowly lifting, or at least everyone's getting previews of Star Wars Zero Company, a game I'm looking forward to releasing later this month on the 28th. People are starting to talk about it, kind of give their own thoughts and opinions. There's no scores on like Metacritic yet, but people are at least allowed to post what they're thinking about the game. I've seen some people saying it's pretty good. I've seen some people saying that it doesn't quite break away from like the XCOM roots that people have become used to. I'm just kind of looking for a Star Wars game, an XCOM game set in the Star Wars universe. So I'm not going to hold it too much against that. But if you're looking for something that it sounds like if you're looking for something that pushes the envelope, maybe this one isn't it. So if you're looking for a different turn-based strategy game, you might want to look elsewhere. But this also kind of reads to me like reviewer privilege, where if you play the same game over and over again, you're going to think less of those games, whereas I haven't had a good turn-based strategy game in a while, so I'm very much looking forward to just playing as my pew-pew troopers and with my Jedi just bouncing around the battlefield playing an XCOM game, but with the Star Wars skin. So that's ultimately my early impressions, but I'm curious if I'm gonna be, when I get this later this month, what it will actually be like, where the review scores will end up. Moving right along, Dawn of War 4, the fourth in the Dawn of War franchise in the 40K RTS games, has been slightly delayed by 6 or 7 weeks. They're moving from their mid-September release window, which was already crowded with like Fire Emblem and Wolverine, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and is now being pushed into, I don't know, a somewhat safer area, but it is going to come out post GTA 6 on December 3rd. So again, like that's 7-8 weeks there, or no, that's more than 7. That's like 13. That's like 10 weeks. I digress. But yes, I don't know that the overlap on Dawn of War fans is very big with the overlap of GTA fans, especially since GTA is not launching on PC and Dawn of War is. So I will probably be taking some time away from my Miami shenanigans to check out Dawn of War 4, because I'm very excited for a 40K RTS, considering I've played all the previous ones. But I think it could be, and ultimately I think it is more safe than its current slate, or what its previous release date was for mid-September. So I'm excited for Dawn of War 4, but I'm just gonna have to wait a few more weeks till December. Congress, the United States Congress, is finally taking a stance against Roblox. They're launching an official investigation. We've had case by case and maybe even statewide investigations into like Roblox and what it's doing to protect children. And now it has gotten all the way up to the United States Congress. So, and this week was announced that an official congressional investigation has been launched into the company behind Roblox and what they are doing to protect little kids from child predators, which is something that's been going on for quite some time. So, it's finally reached the upper echelons of criminal investigations, and now, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming out of that. So, curious to see where Roblox ends up after something like this. Wolverine is only a few, as I said, is only a few weeks away, launching in mid-September. But to celebrate the launch, PlayStation is releasing an official PS5 version with Wolverine with the signature yellow color of Wolverine's original outfit. It's also got his slash marks on it. They're also launching a controller as well with it. So if you're excited, as I am, for the upcoming Wolverine game, which will probably be my game of choice now, mid-September, now that Dawn of War has moved out, I could buy a specific PS5 and DualSense controller to show off that fandom. So pretty exciting stuff there, and more excitement for the upcoming Wolverine game. Not to be outshone, Microsoft is also doing their own exclusive controllers to celebrate their upcoming video game. Gears of War E-Day has 2 different controllers that are launching, Microsoft Xbox controllers that are launching. One with kind of a locust figured prominently on it, and one that I'm more interested in is the one that's got the red gear symbol, and it shows kind of like the cracking out of the ground kind of look for it. Very interesting stuff, and a lot of excitement for these 2 controllers, even though my expectations for the upcoming Gears of War game are a little bit tempered, because I'm curious how it does elevate Gears of War games, because I've been playing those for over a decade now. If you want to catch them all Diabetes Edition, you can go to Krispy Kreme to catch Pokemon donuts. There are 6 different unique donuts to celebrate Pokemon at Krispy Kreme. So there's one for Jigglypuff and Pikachu, all the starter Pokemon, Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, as well as just like a generic Pokeball looking one. I think you can buy them in dozen packs where you get 2 of each. And then maybe there's a special edition boxing with it all. So I got to check out these Krispy Kreme donuts, because the once in a lifetime, or the once in a blue moon times when I go to Krispy Kreme, I want it to be for a special edition donut, even though I generically just want the regular old Krispy Kreme basics, which are amazing. But I digress. Moving right along, speaking of Warhammer, I think I've talked about it somewhere in here. The fantasy version of Warhammer, Total War Warhammer 3, each of the different Warhammer games, Total War Warhammer games, has had this kind of overarching, all-encompassing Immortal Empires campaign where you can play all the different races and factions. You can play multiplayer. And that version, that mode, I guess, of Total War Warhammer is now going free next month. So you'll be able to play multiplayer with your friends. You'll no longer need the base games of Total War Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, and you'll just need to download this kind of offline mode. We don't know, or online mode. We don't know whether or not all the DLCs will be free, or if you'll have access to all the different races. I think they'll probably still want to monetize. They've had over the years kind of one-off characters or races so that you can play different factions. But if you just want to get in and experience Total War Warhammer Fantasy, you'll be able to do that next month for free. So pretty exciting stuff there. Speaking of grand fantasy, grand strategy fantasy games, War for Westeros, which was recently delayed, showed off just a snippet, like a 15-second snippet of gameplay ahead of what we assume is going to be Gamescom footage that'll show off, announcing that there'll be a Gamescom and that we'll have a longer, more expansive preview of what to expect in Game of Thrones War for Westeros. But it seems like they're kind of going that grand strategy route, much like Total War, just not with this, creative assembly. But yeah, I think that's a perfect kind of recipe for what you kind of would expect in a Westeros-based game, a Game of Thrones game, is just kind of like that overarching moving armies. If I'm going to have a dragon, do I have to worry about the White Walkers? So I think grand strategy is a good vibe of it. Maybe you don't get as much of the politics, or they'll have to find more interesting ways to integrate the politics of it all. But yeah, it should be pretty cool stuff. So I'll be looking for that coming out of Gamescom next week. Last but not least, we got a little bit more information on Galactic Racer, and it's actually combining into, besides being a racing game, is combining with another genre which we all know and love. It's going to be a roguelike. So apparently, after you do a kind of randomly generated race, you will select from several upgrades that will upgrade your pod racer or your speed bike or something like that. And then you'll kind of work your way through that. I assume until you either explode or win the tournament prize and get the fancy belt or whatever you're looking for in the Star Wars galaxy. But yeah, I think that's actually a pretty interesting way to like, combine two disparate things. You know, we're kind of used to the racing genre where you just do a series of tracks until you kind of overcome the narrative. But the fact that it's roguelike means that, your racer's going to explode. You have to go back to the beginning and kind of build up a new one and see how this one behaves differently. So all interesting stuff that I'm pretty excited for. I played pod racing back on the N64 like several decades ago. So I wasn't too interested in this one, but the fact that it's roguelike and I'll be able to play it, potentially indefinitely and do harder and harder races with different upgrades sounds like a pretty compelling kind of hook there. So pretty excited for that. But that's it for this week. Let me know if you feel I forgot anything down below in the comments. But as always, thanks for watching. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super weekend and hope you have a super day. Bye.